Something just shifted in the global silver market, and nobody saw it coming. While you were sleeping, China executed the largest coordinated metal acquisition in modern history. 72 hours, multiple continents, one objective. And they're not finished. What I'm about to reveal isn't speculation. It isn't market rumors. This is documented evidence of the most aggressive commodity acquisition in decades. And when you understand what China actually bought, when you see the scale of this operation, you'll realize we're not watching ordinary market activity. We're watching the foundation of the global silver system get quietly dismantled. The first sign appeared in Singapore, 4:30 a.m. local time. A bulk order that cleared out 3 major refineries, 23 tons of refined silver, gone. Payment terms? Immediate wire transfer? No negotiation? No price discussion? The seller's words? They paid whatever we asked. By 6 a.m., similar calls were flooding London metal exchange dealers. Not requests. Demands. Chinese entities with corporate structures that traced back to state-owned enterprises. They weren't buying silver. They were vacuuming it up. But here's where this stops being a normal transaction and becomes something else entirely. These buyers didn't just want immediate delivery. They wanted exclusivity agreements. They wanted first right of refusal on future production. They wanted supply chain lockdowns. Within 8 hours, reports were coming in from Perth, from Zurich, from Toronto. The same pattern, the same buyers, the same unlimited capital, and the same response from the sellers. We've never seen anything like this. Well, let me give you numbers that should make your blood run cold. In 72 hours, Chinese entities acquired approximately 180 tons of physical silver. That's 5.8 million ounces. To put that in perspective, that's more silver than most countries import in an entire year. That's enough silver to supply Tesla's global production for 3 months. That's enough to manufacture 2.4 million solar panels. But they didn't stop at spot purchases. They locked in forward contracts for an additional 400 tons over the next 6 months. They secured supply agreements with mines in Peru, Mexico, and Australia. They essentially bought the future supply of silver before it even comes out of the ground. This wasn't buying. This was siege warfare. Now the official explanation will be simple. China is the world's largest manufacturer of electronics, solar panels, and electric vehicles. They need silver for industrial production. Demand is growing. They're simply securing supply. That explanation is garbage. China has been managing industrial silver needs for decades. They understand supply chains. They understand inventory management. They don't panic by 6 months of supply in 72 hours unless something fundamental has changed. So what changed? What triggered the most aggressive silver acquisition in modern history? And why did they execute it with military-level coordination and secrecy? The answer lies in something nobody is talking about. Something that makes China's silver hoarding not just significant, but existential. The global supply chain for silver is more fragile than anyone realizes, and China just figured out they could break it. Here's what they see that we don't. Global silver production is flat. It has been for 3 years. New mines aren't coming online fast enough to meet rising demand. Industrial consumption is accelerating faster than supply growth. The math doesn't work. But there's a deeper problem. Silver mining is geographically concentrated. 12 countries control 80% of global production, and most of those countries have political relationships with China that the West doesn't. Mexico produces 23% of global silver. China is Mexico's second largest trading partner. Peru produces 13%. China is Peru's largest trading partner. Chile, Bolivia, Argentina, all major silver producers, all increasingly aligned with Chinese economic interests. What we're watching isn't just a commodity acquisition, it's supply chain colonization. China is using their economic relationships to create exclusive access to silver sources. While Western governments worry about chip supply chains, China is quietly cornering the market for one of the most critical industrial metals on Earth. And here's the terrifying part. This strategy works because silver is different from other commodities. You can substitute aluminum for steel in many applications. You can replace copper with fiber optic cables for data transmission. But silver? Silver has unique properties that make it irreplaceable in key technologies. The highest electrical conductivity of any element, the highest thermal conductivity, antimicrobial properties, photovoltaic efficiency. You cannot manufacture advanced electronics without silver. You cannot build solar panels without silver. You cannot produce electric vehicle batteries without silver. China understands this, and they just cornered the market. Let me show you what happens next. Phase 2 of this operation is already beginning. Chinese manufacturers are signing long-term contracts with Western companies for electronics and solar panels. But here's the catch. The contracts include force majeure clauses related to raw material availability. Translation, if China can't get silver, they can't fulfill orders. But since China now controls silver supply, they decide who gets electronics and who doesn't. This is economic warfare disguised as supply chain management. The first casualties are already appearing. 3 European solar panel manufacturers reported delivery delays this week. Reason? Supply chain constraints. 2 American electronics companies quietly extended lead times. Cause? Procurement challenges. Nobody is connecting the dots yet. Nobody realizes that these delays aren't random market fluctuations. They're the opening moves in China's resource control strategy. But the implications go far beyond delayed deliveries. If China can control silver supply, they can control the pace of the green energy transition. They can decide which countries get solar panel production capacity and which don't. They can determine who builds electric vehicle fleets and who remains dependent on fossil fuels. This isn't just about silver. This is about technological sovereignty. And Western governments are completely asleep. While they debate carbon taxes and renewable energy mandates, China is quietly acquiring the physical materials that make those policies possible, or impossible. The silver market was already tight before China's operation. Global stocks were declining. Industrial demand was growing. Investment demand was increasing. The system was under stress. Now, China just removed 180 tons from global circulation, and they're planning to remove 400 more tons over the next 6 months. In a market that produces 880 million ounces annually, removing 18 million ounces creates immediate scarcity. Removing 31 million ounces over 6 months creates crisis. Here's what that scarcity looks like in practice. Physical silver premiums in Asia spiked 40% in the last week. Delivery times for silver bars extended to 8 to 12 weeks. Some refineries stopped quoting prices altogether, claiming insufficient supply visibility. The paper silver market is still showing controlled prices. Futures contracts are still trading at predictable levels. But the physical market is already decoupling. You can buy paper claims on silver at $71 per ounce. But try to get physical delivery, and you'll pay $95 or more, if you can get delivery at all. This bifurcation is exactly what China wants. They control physical supply while Western financial institutions trade paper promises. When the crisis hits, when supply shortages become undeniable, the paper market collapses and the physical market explodes. China gets the metal. Western investors get worthless contracts. But there's another layer to this strategy that's even more sophisticated. China isn't just hoarding silver. They're simultaneously flooding the market with products that contain silver, solar panels, electronics, batteries. They're selling manufactured goods to the West while accumulating the raw materials needed to make those goods. It's a perfect trap. Western countries buy Chinese electronics, paying China for silver embedded in products. Then China uses that payment to buy more silver on the open market. The West ends up financing China's resource acquisition while depleting their own material independence. This strategy has precedent. China did the same thing with rare earth elements 20 years ago. They cornered 90% of global rare earth production. Then they restricted exports when they needed geopolitical leverage. Countries that depended on rare earths for technology manufacturing suddenly found themselves at China's mercy. Now they're doing it with silver. And silver is far more critical than rare earths. The question isn't whether China's strategy will work. The question is how quickly Western governments will realize what's happening. And by the time they do realize, it may be too late to respond effectively. Because here's the brutal reality. You can't just turn on silver production like a factory. Mining operations take years to develop. Refining capacity takes months to scale. By the time the West recognizes the crisis and tries to respond, China will have locked up supply for the next decade. And there's something else, something that makes this situation even more dangerous. China isn't just buying silver. They're buying time. Time to transition their economy away from Western dependence. Time to develop alternative supply chains. Time to build technological sovereignty. While Western countries debate trade policy and tariff rates, China is quietly acquiring the physical foundation of future technology. When the competition intensifies, when economic tensions escalate, China will control the materials needed for defense systems, renewable energy, and advanced electronics. This is what preparation for long-term strategic competition looks like. Not rhetoric, not diplomatic posturing, physical control over critical resources. The warning signs are everywhere. Chinese media outlets are beginning to discuss resource security and material independence. State-owned enterprises are restructuring their balance sheets to hold more hard assets. Government officials are talking about reducing dependence on unreliable supply chains. This is preparation for decoupling. But not the kind of decoupling Western politicians talk about. This is China decoupling on their terms, after securing the resources they need to maintain technological advancement without Western cooperation. The silver operation is just the beginning. Reports suggest similar patterns in lithium markets and cobalt markets and graphite. China is systematically acquiring control over every material needed for advanced technology and renewable energy. And they're doing it while Western governments are distracted by other priorities: trade wars, military conflicts, domestic politics. Nobody's paying attention to the quiet resource acquisition that determines who controls the future economy. By the time this strategy becomes obvious, by the time mainstream media starts reporting on it, it will be too late to counter. The resources will be locked up. The supply chains will be controlled. The leverage will be established. China's silver operation isn't a market transaction. It's a declaration of intent. They're signaling that they understand the real competition isn't military or diplomatic. It's resource control. It's supply chain dominance. It's the ability to determine who gets access to the materials needed for modern civilization. And they just demonstrated that when they decide to move, they can move faster and more decisively than anyone expected. The 72 hours that changed the silver market weren't random. They weren't reactive. They were prepared, planned, executed with precision that suggests months or years of preparation, which raises the most disturbing question of all. If China was preparing for this silver operation, what else are they preparing for? What other resources are they targeting? What other supply chains are they planning to control? The answers to those questions will determine which countries maintain technological sovereignty and which become resource-dependent colonies in the new economic order. The silver market just showed us how quickly that transition can happen. 72 hours, no warning, no negotiation, just decisive action that reshapes global resource flows. And this was just phase one.